Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem. Parshas Balak. We know that Balak, the king of Moab at that time, hires Bilam in order to curse the Jews. Of course, he's unsuccessful. He ends up blessing the Jews. But one of his strategies in order to curse the Jews is to try to get either the Jews to sin or to remind Hashem of how bad the Jews can be and have the potential to be. So if we compare two verses, in verse 5, that would be chapter 22, verse 5. Balak actually tells Bilam, Hine am yotza mi Mitzrayim. Behold, there are these people who yotza, past tense, left Egypt. But if we just go to verse 11, it says over there, when Bilam is speaking to Hashem, he's saying, Hine ha'am hayotzei mi Mitzrayim. He changes the tense. He's not quoting Balak verbatim, but rather he says, behold, this is the people that is going out of Egypt. This is a pella, because why would he change the tense? What does he gain? His gain is, as the Yakar explains, to let Hashem know it's as if they're leaving now. Why? Ki bilam lahaskir avonam bo. He's coming to remind Hashem of their sins. What sin is that? It's as if they are only leaving Egypt now because they never left Egypt entirely. The words he says is Shadoimik kilu adayin lo yatsu mikol v'kol mi Mitzrayim. Their head, their heart is still in Egypt. In other words, we know this famous saying, it's easier to take the Jew out of Egypt than to take the Egypt out of the Jew. And therefore, what is he saying? Ki tamid borohem. They're always seeking an evil thing. And a few examples he gives. For example, in Numbers 14:4, when we said Nitna Rosh Neshuva Mitzrayim, right? Let us appoint the head and go back to Egypt. So he doesn't bring this down, but he mentions that in all of our complaints, we're always talking about going back to Egypt. So if we just go back to example in Bamidbar, I think it's Perek 11, Perek Yud Aleph, verse 4 and 5, and maybe 6. Over there we said, we were complaining then. All of our complaints are always about wanting to return to Egypt. The rabble that was among them cultivated a craving, and the children of Israel also turned, and they wept, and said, who will feed us meat? Verse 5, we remember the fish, the free fish, right? The fish that we would eat in Egypt for free of charge. What about the cucumbers, and the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic? But now our life is parched, there is nothing, we have nothing. But before our eyes is just manna. So we see that so much of the complaints and the complaining that we had done in Egypt was in the Midbar, after we already experienced our freedom heading into Eretz Yisrael, was somehow looking back. So I think this is to a certain extent a great tochacha for myself, even though I'm living in Eretz Yisrael. And I would say how much more so for those of you who are still living outside the land of Israel. He says like this, that they were constantly, their thoughts were constantly wandering in the exile, so to speak. And it was very difficult for them to depart, to separate themselves from Egypt. And it was as if they were leaving right now. And this is what Bilam was trying to convey to Hashem when he said about these people that are only leaving now. Okay, take it to heart. Hopefully we can all learn to disconnect ourselves from the foreign societies in which we live and attach ourselves not only to the people of Israel, but to the land of Israel and to the God of Israel, and come on home.
Yiboneh,